Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, peak performance coach, Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. I'm your guest, Brian, and I'm very excited to welcome back a guest we had on December 18th of 2023. And many of you will remember the episode, Nudges from the Other Side, Mary's Connection with the Afterlife. That episode has been highly listened to and spread around 4 continents already and still growing. So we had this idea a few weeks ago to bring her back kind of with a special format. We're going to get started on that. But before we welcome her officially, Mary wanted me to remind everyone, or to recall, if you listen to Mary back in December, or if you're new, that Mary does have a neurological condition that affects her voice. So you'll likely notice it at first, but you'll also get used to her manner of speaking, the cadence and the rhythm. After a while, you won't even notice it. So just relax, sit back, listen, and lean in for Mary's story. Mary Connaughty-Sullivan, welcome back to the Bamboo Lab podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Brian.
You are more than welcome. You know, it was so interesting when we talked last time, because obviously I'd read your book, and we'll include a link to that for all the Bamboo Pack members out there. I'm going to recommend click on it. I loved your book. I absolutely loved it. The story that you share and the journey you went through, the depths of sorrow and tragedy you went through, it brought tears to my eyes. It made me feel like if Mary can get through this, I can get through anything in life. And it really made me reflect on so much. So I just let's start with we have this really interesting idea of you want to share more of your story and the learning and the wisdom that you have acquired through your journey. So I'm going to kind of lean on you right now and let you share what you'd like to share with the Bamboo Pack.
All right. Thank you. And yes, welcome, listeners. I'm really glad to be back. And what I'm going to do today is just bring you back into that journey. And when we get near the end, we're going to talk a little bit more about why we're talking about this and what it may mean for you. I woke the morning of Monday, March 31st, 2010, Memorial Day, with rain pelting down on the roof of our horse trailer. It was early, but unusual that I was the first awake. I knew we wouldn't ride the horses in the heavy rain, so I decided to head to the barn to feed and clean stalls and let my husband have a rare late sleep. I arrived back at our campsite about an hour later, and when I stepped through the door, Dan, my husband, was frantic. I have to get to high ground to try to get a cell signal. We must have 50 messages in our voicemail, but I can't get through. Something has gone terribly wrong. Mary, get the trailer buttoned up so we can hook up and head to the barn for the horses. Be quick. As I worked to prepare the trailer to head out, I sifted through all the various scenarios I could think of. I settled on the idea that the house had burned down. I distinctly remember thinking of my only child, Aaron, my 20-year-old son, and assuring myself of his self-sufficiency and knowing for sure it had nothing to do with him. About 20 minutes later, Dan walked back through the doors of our trailer. And I never want to see a look on anyone's face like his look that morning. He was suppressing tears, but he couldn't speak. I asked several times, what is wrong? And all he could do was shake his head from side to side. I cannot explain what made me ask, is it Aaron? Dan nodded yes. My heart sank. I cannot even explain what then made me ask, is he dead? And once again, my husband nodded yes. My world went silent. We loaded the horses in the driving rain and barely spoke on a 2-hour ride back home. I suspect we were both sifting through our own private thoughts, enveloped in a terrible nightmare. Back home, people rushed out to meet us in the driveway. Dan's ex-wife embraced us, saying she came over as soon as she got word. Dan's oldest son, Matthew, and one of Aaron's best friends, was crying and repeating over and over, it's my fault, it's my fault. The police. He ran off the road. He died instantly. Not a scratch on him. But don't go to the morgue. Me to all the kids and police. I need everyone out of this house right now, except for my immediate family. And then Dan. Mary, just go up to bed and lie down. I'll take care of everything else. Lying there in bed, I remember thinking that every minute that passed was taking me further away from my son. I'd never hold him again. I'd never smell his sweet scent. I'd never share another smile. We'd never laugh watching a movie together. There would be nothing but memories from now on. Too distraught and restless to lie in bed, I finally went downstairs and announced, I'm going to the morgue. Anyone that wants to join me can. Anyone that doesn't, I understand. Dan and my stepdaughter, Megan, jumped up and came along. My stepsons, Matthew and Peter, stayed home, tending to their own private, unfathomable misery. I will never regret going to see Aaron that day. I got to see what his face looked like when he passed out of our time. And he looked peaceful. A small smile played on his lips. And his expression looked exactly as it did whenever he water skied and was just coming up on his board, full of anticipation for a good ride. I didn't know it at the time, but that was my first gift. Grief is a dark and lonely path. I was being tortured. Here was a problem I couldn't fix. All eyes were on me. Dan watched me. We talked little, but he watched a lot, and he let me have space. The animals became physically ill with the palpable grief that clung to me. Every morning, I mucked stalls and sobbed. I could barely see what I was doing, and my shirt was wet with tears and snot. The barn and the horses felt like a safe zone. But then one of the horses contracted a rare upper respiratory virus. Erin's dog Sam developed a blistering welt on the bridge of her nose. One of the cats went into kidney failure. I was literally making everyone around me sick. And yet the sun still came up every morning, and I marveled how the rest of the world kept turning while everything in my world felt utterly black and hopeless. I don't recall looking for help or even trying to soothe myself. I spoke with very few people, but rejected those with ideas of accompanying me to grief groups or counseling. Nearly all of my strength had been stripped from me, but I had a coat of armor that said, "Keep away," and I pretty firmly shut everyone out. Dan kept watching. I'd intended to make an eye doctor appointment after that Memorial Day weekend, as I'd noticed a visual disturbance just as we were heading out to horse camp that fateful weekend. It hadn't let up, but of course, weeks went by before I could even think about tending to myself. I recall making an eye appointment, and for some reason, I told the perfect stranger on the other end of the phone that I just lost my only child. And although I have no idea who she is or who she was, I will never forget her words. One step at a time, just put one foot in front of the other for now. And that's a super simple phrase, but it hit me like a bolt. It felt visceral, it felt real, it felt true, and it felt very wise. I turned it over and over in my mind, and I modified it to just take one breath at a time. And that simple idea got me through 1 hour to the next on those early, dark, torturous days. It was a mere thread, but it was a lifeline. Another gift, like a little footlight along a very difficult path. A few weeks after Erin's accident, a work colleague called me. When he asked how I was doing, I told him that I supposed I was doing about how anyone would expect. It was rough. I didn't really know what to do with myself. I said I only knew I hadn't figured out anything I actually wanted to do. And for the second time, someone uttered something simple that absolutely hit home. My friend said, "Listen, Mary, you do what you want to do. If you want to work, work. If you don't want to work, don't. Just do what you need to do." And as I listened to him, my eyes landed on the bookshelf in my office. There was an empty journal nestled next to the books. When we hung up the phone, I picked up that journal and just began to write. I wrote and wrote and wrote some more. I poured out my thoughts and feelings in that private journal, and it felt cathartic. A third gift, another footlight. I'd begun to notice some unusual things were happening around me. Songs would come on the radio, and it felt like the lyrics were a message. Sometimes songs that I'd never even heard before would strike me with a significant message. Birds and insects began behaving oddly and showing up and doing things that I hadn't seen before. Lights would come on and go off all on their own. Candles would sputter out and go up in smoke, only to have a flame suddenly appear again. I would have dreams of Aaron that were so real, I felt like I just spent time in his actual presence. He would console me and say things like, "You were a great mom, and I love you." Dan and I both once saw the word M-O-M, mom, spelled out in the clouds. These things that were happening were so surreal and out of order, it almost felt as if the world had started turning in a different direction. I always felt sure they were connected to Aaron, that they were signs from him intended to help me. And I put all of them in the journal that I was rapidly filling. And they too felt like a gift and little footlights on my pathway. In addition to the signs, words from others flooded in. Books, poems, songs. Sometimes even certain movies brought words of inspiration and comfort to me. And I filled my journals more. Those inspirational words from so many others were precious and lit my path. Those slivers of light, the threads of hope, the messages of love, the strange and unlikely connections to Aaron. I realized I was coming out of the dark. I had a lifeline, and I hung on tight. I know that you've been there too. Not my exact story, but your own. Your own disappointment, setbacks, grief, suffering. And during those times, you've likely wondered how you will manage to go on. You probably wanted to quit. And I'm not here to tell you to just go make lemonade out of lemons. But I am saying that you can keep going. I'm saying that when life gets so tough that you don't know how you're going to make it, when the path becomes so obscured, you don't know where you are, when you're sure you're out of options, you still can make it. And you might be listening to me right now, wanting to shout, "Oh yeah? How?" And here is what I'll say. It's the most important message of all. Seek your path, not my path, not your colleague's path, not your spouse's, not your parents, not your heroes, but yours. And sometimes that path is so dark and obscured, you may not even have a glimmer of an idea of where to place your foot next. Sometimes, like me, you may find yourself in a free fall. But don't give up. Look for a way, expect some footlights, and then follow them. Listen to others, but you decide what advice to keep and what to discard. Ask for help. Watch for signs. Determine alternatives. Make plans and then make changes. Recognize the little gains along the way. Give yourself room to breathe and to think. Try it out. Get up again. Practice healthy habits, rest, sleep, eat good food, exercise your body, give your mind a break, and take time to immerse yourself in something simple and even fun, and then go back to work again. Understand that your mind will tell you to give up long before your body and your spirit are at their limit. Grab a hold of the threads that are pulling you up. Ditch things that don't work. Expect and appreciate the little miracles that happen. And when you're back on solid footing, hope others. I've had plenty of difficulties in my 65 years on this planet. The visual disturbance that occurred the weekend of Aaron's passing turned out to be macular degeneration. And I've had over 150 eye injections. Yes, needles in my right eye since June of 2010. My voice disorder has aggravated me and kept me humble now for nearly half my life. I have aches and pains just like everyone else. This is a human condition here on earth. But just as when an herb is crushed and it releases its incredible fragrance, it's the hard times that we endure and survive that strengthen and deepen our character and make us of greater service to others. Because in the end, as Ram Dass says, aren't we all just walking each other home?
Well, thank you. Mary, thanks for taking us on that journey. I read your book, and, we had our conversation on the podcast in December of last year. And hearing you go into such depth over the past, 15 or 20 minutes, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't reach any Kleenex from where I am, so I had to take my shirt off so I could keep my nose and eyes from dripping all over the desk here. I want to reach out to the Bamboo Pack. I want to reach out to that audience member out there right now who is going through something, and I want to recap some of the highlights that Mary just shared with us. Because I know, as she said, we all go through things. Some of us have and will again. Some of us are right now. And there may not be Mary's. They're not mine. They're yours, and they're unique to you. So if I can recap 3 primary points that I think Mary very clearly share with us is, number 1, watch for the footlights. And I really like that, Mary, because when you were saying footlights, I was thinking, what is a footlight? I know of a headlight. Then I realized it's what you see as you're going down a trail or a path that's lit that shows you the next step. I guess I don't know if I've ever heard that term, and it just resonated with me. So watch for the footlights that are placed in front of you and seek your path. And Mary was very clear, not others' paths, not your boss, not your spouse, not your friends, not your family, not even your hero's path, but your path. And this one here is a big one, I think. Remember that our minds and our bodies will tell us to give up, but our strength is greater than we realize, and we can keep going. Our mind and body, but our spirit is so much stronger than we give credit to. And I'll be honest with you, Mary, that's one that has affected me the past 12 months a lot, is trying to keep, allowing my spirit, as my mind is saying, man, do this, do that, don't stretch out of your comfort zone. My body's saying, don't go the extra mile. It's really been trying to gather and harness the strength of the spirit. And that one hit really hard for me. And then when you're back on solid footing, or at least more solid footing, be of service to others. Because one of the beautiful things, Mary, you have done that very few people have done or do when going through such a difficult I mean, the most difficult thing a human being can go through, let's call it what it is you've turned that into something that is now impacting others and helping others go through either a very similar tragedy or challenge or a different tragedy or challenge. So you've embodied that last, lesson of being of service to others once you're on more solid footing. So I just can't thank you enough for that. I have a question for you, Mary, that resonated with me during your talk. Is you said expect and appreciate little miracles, and I've never heard it put that way. Like I've always heard appreciate the miracles, but when you say expect little and appreciate them, when you say expect, what do you mean by that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. And it really, I think, hinges on another book that my husband and I think many others around the world, rather live our lives by. And that is the book, The Secret. And it's really the age-old idea that very few people know. It's like acres of diamonds right in your backyard. But the idea that the things that we expect and believe in are what sets the universe in motion to bring them to us. And so just a really simple illustration. How many times during my career, over 40 years in financial services, was I expected to get up in front of a group and I'm off stage sitting there literally teeth-chattering going, everyone is going to be thinking about my voice and I'm going to be humiliated and da-da-da-da-da. And you know what? That's exactly what happened. And it's because I was living in a fear state. And when I finally looked myself in the mirror and said, girl, your voice isn't going to get any better. And so you better step up and own it, because if you have anything to be of value to others and of service to others, you better get beyond it and be able to speak up. And I did that first through writing. But once I began telling people, yeah, I have this voice condition, guess what? They really didn't care. Once that they could understand me and get used to the rhythm, they didn't care. But moreover, because I was now in a different frame of mind and expecting everything to be all right, it was. Mm-hmm. And so it's just really looking for what you expect. Make a vision board. Write down your goals and then look at those goals every day. And, lots of people have probably told your listeners and you and me this, but the reason why they tell you that is because it really works. And it really hinges on the universe is vibrating, if I can use a term like that, around all of us. And it sets things in motion when we believe, when we set forth the things that we want and we expect. Doesn't mean that I'm going to win the lottery, but if I were hinged on money, it probably would mean that money would come to me as long as my frame of mind was right and it wasn't coming from a place of greed, etc. So that was a long answer, but That's what I mean by expect the miracle.
I agree with you on that. And I think I probably share with you on the last time we spoke, but I know I've shared with a lot of my guests who discuss the concept of manifestation and things of that nature. Sure. And honestly, I've shared this before. A client bought me the book, The Secret, when it first came out. And I looked at it and I don't know if I read the back or story. And I threw it to the side. I said, this is a bunch of crap. And I went back to work and I did. I'm like, this is crap. Good luck with this. And I didn't say that to my client because I appreciated the gesture. And it really wasn't until probably, 10 years later, it's probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I started thinking about what have I done that's kind of, I always say it's kept me out of jail or has kept me out of the hospital all my life. And what are the things I've done? And one of those things was this thing I do every day that was positive affirmations. I've been doing it for now 30 years. And I call it my True Peak Identity exercise now. But I thought that's probably the number one thing. Then I realized, isn't that just manifestation? Isn't it just telling myself something every day that finally my mind over years started to believe it and it started to manifest these things into my life? Now, has it been perfect? No. But it's definitely probably the greatest thing I've done for myself personally and professionally. And then I started thinking that's what manifestation is. So I started researching manifestation and reading books on it and realizing a lot of the old, call it self-help literature, Think and Grow Rich being one of them, one of the Bibles of the self-help world, is all about that. And this is 100 years ago when he wrote this book was written, or so, I don't know, 80 to 100 years ago. And, then I read a lot of other books on the subject. And of course I did read The Secret, and I saw the movie The Secret, and wasn't a big fan of the movie. I thought it was a little, to me, because here's my thoughts. I think manifestation has to be you have to apply it as well. I think some people saw it as, if I just think about it, it will come, but you also have to earn it. You have to expect it and you have to earn it and work toward it. But if you work toward it without the expectation of it, you're probably not going to get it. So that manifesting and expecting is incredibly important. So I thought that's kind of what you meant, but I really like the way you put that, expect the miracles. Because you will find what you seek. You will find what you look for. And if you're looking for sadness and failure or an unhealthy relationship, you're going to find it. And if you look for a healthy relationship and a healthy body and a healthy mind and a healthy, success, you're probably going to find it as well. So I really like that. Have you put together a vision board, Mary?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too, because I was just going to mention over the years, I think I heard about them like on Oprah, which I rarely watch television, but I really did like Oprah. And, I've seen maybe a dozen of her programs. That tells you how much I watch TV, because I know she was on for many, many years. But I remember listening to an episode or program that really went into vision boards and what it's about. And then we wound up doing one at work. And so I put it away, after I did it. I don't remember thinking that much about it until about a year later. And I was probably cleaning my office and I ran across it and I pulled it out. And as I looked at each and every one of the pictures, the illustrations, the words on the board, everything had actually happened. And I can distinctly remember when I made the vision board, all those things were things that I really wanted in my future. But at that time, I had no idea whether they would manifest. And sure, I was working towards them. I was laying the foundation, but I wasn't actively looking at it every day. And so it was really awesome to go back, a year or more later and find out that everything had come to pass, which only made me more interested in doing another one. And so my husband and I did that, and I tacked mine on the back of my office door. And since I rarely closed my office door, I only viewed it on occasion until it got time to move a few years later. I was working from home, and I looked at it, and by George, everything on that vision board had come to pass. And I now have two of them. One is in a little box right in front of my monitor, and it's kind of my personal home life one. And the other one is one on, I think, PowerPoint on my computer, and I look at it about once a month, and it's really my goals for the book, not just from the other side, which, as Brian mentioned, is a book I wrote about, it's got a lot more depth to it than what I just talked about. And as I said, the words of others and so forth. And the book is really intended as a gift for the world. You do not need to have already experienced grief in order to get anything out of it. I've literally had readers from all around the world tell me, I've read it and I've actually made some decisions to make major life changes that have nothing to do with grief, but the words, of mine and others inspired them to feel that they could begin to make some changes that they wanted, but heretofore were maybe too, afraid or nervous to do. And so my goal for the book is for it to spread and just kind of one by one, like ripples in a pond, continue panning out into the world in the hands and hearts of those who need its messages. I'm dedicating 100% of book sale proceeds to charity. This really is not about me, but that's what this new vision board is all about. And yeah, along the way, sometimes I get really, really frustrated when it feels like, I've got my little group of aficionados, but the book sort of stalls a little bit. Or I'm sitting here feeling like, gosh, it takes a Herculean effort on my part every single week in order to just spread the word. And my original vision was that it would be like, remember in church around Christmas or Easter, when everybody receives a single candle and they're all unlit, and the usher walks by and lights one, and that person passes to the next and the next to the next. And literally within minutes, there's 1,000 candles glowing in the sanctuary. And that was my vision. So I gaze at my book vision board, just in order to help do my part to manifest that vision, that gift to others.
Well, so I want everybody to just take a minute when you're done with the listening today is to look on the show notes. So please click on the link to Mary's book. I'll include it here. It'll go directly to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. I'm not sure which one we did last time, or both. And I would highly recommend it. And here's one of the things Mary, I shared this with you back in December when we were doing the show. When I was reading your book, maybe a week or two prior to us, doing the first interview, I was sitting at or maybe I think it was early evening, and I was talking to my son on the phone, and we got into an argument. Now, Dawson and I are very similar in personality, both pretty headstrong. And we're very close. So sometimes when you're really close to someone, you can argue more readily. And I don't even know what the argument was about. It was something stupid. And we hung up angry at each other. And I sat down and I was reading your book, and I was probably at that time about halfway through it. And I picked it up and started reading more. And it just made me realize, what in the hell are we arguing about? Like to this, probably the next day, we probably both couldn't even remember what we started arguing about. So I had texted him and said, "Hey, son, I love you very, very much." And whatever. And he's like, "Oh, I love you too, Dad. Can't wait to see you this weekend," or something like that. It was like, what it made me do at that moment was appreciate life and appreciate love and appreciate family and friends. Now, that I can't say I've done a great deal better. I mean, a lot better since then, but I do know that I'm more conscious of what I have around me as far as my loved ones, whether it be family, friends, my health, my business. I've been more appreciative since reading your book, hearing your story the first time in December, and now hearing in more depth today. I think these are the things that we need to hear, but not just once. I think your book is a book that could be read every year from people by the readers, just to make sure we ground ourselves, to realize what's truly important in life. We chase so much in life. We try to change, we try to be happy, but really, happiness is not what we own. It's not our car. It's not our home. It's not how popular we are, how good looking we are. All those things together are only 10% of our combined happiness. 50% of our happiness is determined by genetics, DNA, but 40% are the things we choose, the conscious decisions we make, and most of those are all surrounded by who we associate with, how they treat us, how we treat them, the love we feel, and the love we give. That's 40% of our happiness, and that's the only part we can control. But we focus so much on that 10% of the stuff we own, the money we make, the car we drive, the house we live in. And we wonder why people aren't happy. I think stories like yours and how you went through the loss of Aaron and the journey you've taken since in the last 14 years, those are the subtle reminders, or maybe even not so subtle reminders, of really what is important in life. And I have a question for you. Now, we talked 6 months ago, actually to this date. That aired on December 16th or 18th, right? Yeah. So 6 months, your episode aired 6 months to this day.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. On the 18th, can I ask you, and I don't know if this is too personal, are you still receiving those nudges, those signs from Aaron?
Yes. Yes, I am. In fact, I've got the manuscript in Word on my desktop, and the manuscript is everything that you and others have seen. But at the end of it, I have continued to layer in things that have happened. And I would say that Aaron got super, super active, or I was super, super open right after the book launched, and some really nice, things began happening. And so I wrote them in the back of the book. And who knows, I've been thinking about, maybe there'll be a second edition down the road, or a second release that layers those in. I also do bloggishly work on my Facebook page, which is Nudges from the Other Side. And I invite you and your readers, and you probably already are following me there, but I may put some of them up there from time to time. I'm a very inconsistent blogger, but when I do it, you can be assured that it's very much from the heart, or I'm feeling led to do it, so. But yeah, I have continued to hear from Aaron. And then what's really amazing is the more that people become aware of my work, the more that they tell me stories. And if you don't mind, I have a very short story for you right now.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so last weekend, I was very privileged to once again be an assistant at a very dear friend of mine's retreat. And she leads retreats internationally, and it's the parallels of yoga and horsemanship, which, both of these things are sort of in my wheelhouse. Never yoga until I met her, but horsemanship definitely. And now I love doing yoga. But anyway, so I'm her assistant, and she's very generous, always to let me at the end of the program say a couple words about the book, and anybody that's there that wants to purchase a copy of the book is invited to do so. And so this is really something that occurs at the end of the day, at the end of the retreat. But invariably, even mid-morning, before we've even begun, all of a sudden the synchronicities are like popping up. And that particular day, which was last Saturday at lunch, I'm sitting next to a couple of women at a long table. And the woman on my left begins telling me that, my dad just died and my brother died, and she starts talking about how she feels like she's heard from them. And then the woman across from me says, oh, you know what? My mom just died, and she always loved gardening. And I was in the greenhouse a few months ago, and it was an absolutely still day with utterly blue skies, and the door wasn't even open. And all of a sudden, within the greenhouse, the wind chimes began singing, and I could feel a very hefty breeze. And she said, and I knew instantly that it was my mom. And I almost laughed out loud with joy that, they were experiencing these things. And I didn't say anything at the moment. But boy, you can bet when I told my story, more abbreviated version than what I've shared with you here today, at the end of the day, that they were running up, and another woman in the group ran up afterwards, and she said, I lost my own daughter at 17 years old in 1984, and I just want to, give you a hug and tell you I'm sorry for your loss. And so, yeah, the synchronicities and are just amazing. And again, it's just sort of that expecting and then sitting back and waiting for those little miracles.
Speaking of synchronicities, what is the date of Aaron's birthday?
March 20th.
Isn't that
1990?
And so, folks, when we were talking last December, when Mary said that at the end of the show, I think it was, I said, Mary, do you have any idea what date my birthday is? And she said, no. I said, it's March 20th. I mean, there's a 1 in 365 chance of that happening. It's just, I don't know. I have a question for you too. Now, because I agree with you, because I've looked back on my life, and after my father died, I physically saw him. And I can remember that I was only 5 years old, and maybe not. He died when I was 4.5. So I think I was about 5. And I remember the day. I remember exactly what happened. I remember it was a Sunday. I remember where we were all at. I remember where I was at in the house, where he was kneeling down in the house and waved at me. And what he did when I went to run over to him, he kind of waved me off and said, shh, like put his hands up, like, shh. And he just waved at me. And I just waved at him and blew him a kiss. And I kept walking. We were going to church. And I never, ever thought of that as weird. It wasn't until I became an adult. Like, I never thought of that as, well, that's really strange. My dad's not here. He's been gone for a few months now, or a few weeks. I'm not sure what the time frame was after he had passed. But it wasn't until I became an adult that I stopped and realized, wait a minute, that couldn't have happened. And it couldn't have, but it did. That's the thing. It did happen.
Right.
Like, I never doubted it. Like, I never questioned it growing up. I just always remembered that day and what happened. It wasn't a dream. I remember dreams, and I can tell the difference between a dream and reality. But it actually happened. And I remember I remember going to church and kind of thinking about it that day, and then kind of just thought, oh, cool, I got to see Dad again. I was too young. Exactly. I was too young to question the reality or the whether that could be true or not until I got older. And then,
well, and the reason why is as you got older and you became exposed to formal education and the expectation and ideology of others, you unlearned what we all came into this world knowing, which is that we exist eternally. And all major religions would not argue that. They have some variations on where you might go and what you might do or not do afterwards. But we are made of energy, and we know from our own laws of thermodynamics, matter, which is energy, can neither be created nor destroyed. And it stands to reason that there is an essence of us that exists beyond what we know as our earthly path. And there's too many accounts like mine. Yes, they're observable. Are they instantly repeatable? Absolutely not. But you know what? Isn't that the mystery of little miracles? And there's so many things that, quantum physics are now beginning to discover. We're just kind of scratching the surface of new knowledge that may, in fact, take us to that next level where no one will say, oh, that couldn't have been real, or second guess themselves after an incident like that.
Right. And like you said, energy and matter, and energy cannot be destroyed. It just goes on for infinity. Mm-hmm. I listened to I posted it today, I think on no, I didn't. I saved it to my phone. I think it was on Instagram or YouTube. This elderly lady was talking about, or I'll send it to you. I can't repeat it very well. I don't know how to do it well. I don't know how to do it justice. About the light when you die. I think she had a near-death experience or had died and come back. And she talked about the light and how, oh gosh, I didn't even bring it up because I can't repeat it because I only listened to it once and I saved it on my phone. I texted it to myself about how we go into the silver, or we break the silver thread, which is what holds our spirit and our body. And she said, our body is it's a temporary thing. Spirit cannot die. It's our energy. It cannot die. I don't know if she was a physicist or not. And she shared about how we continue to go. I know she didn't talk about what happens afterward, beyond the light, but the light is just pure love. And the light is where we want to be. And what holds us back is our earthly body. And I think it was like a silver thread she used as a symbol. And anyway, I'll send it to you. And if anybody's interested, I can probably anybody can email me and reach out and I can send it to them too. But, You had mentioned something earlier about practicing healthy habits of rest, sleep, eating good foods, exercising, give your mind a rest, taking time to immerse in the simple, fun things, and then go back to work again. How important has that been to you as the exercise, the activity, the rest, and the healthy eating for you?
Mm. Yeah. So one thing I'll say before I answer that is to the listeners, those suggestions are not anything linear. It's almost more like throwing a bunch of things out there that you may grab onto one or two or five or eventually maybe even all of them. I don't know, but they're not linear. They're not meant to be prescriptive. They're only there as a smattering of the things that really served as lifelines to me. And I do not think that I exercised for months after losing Aaron. I think I was more of just, as I said, one breath at a time, beginning to put one foot in front of the other. And then just all of a sudden, some little, rays of sunshine would pierce through this darkness that enveloped me. But, later on, I went back to what for me, luckily, has been a lifelong habit of getting a lot of exercise, eating right, and just, really healthy habits, engaging in good rest. And I'm very careful what I watch, what I read, what I immerse my mind in. If it isn't going to be helpful, not that my life is all about self-improvement, my life is also very much about finding joy, being of service to others. But it's for those reasons that I probably would never go to a horror movie, because I think, for me, it brings me into a state of fear and just hyper area that I don't want to be in. And so I just believe in soaking in the things that are healthy to this body that I'm temporarily occupying while here on Earth, because I can do better for me and for others if I'm taking good care of it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I agree with you. I find that when I am at my lowest points emotionally or mentally, that's when I least want to take care of my body. I don't want to exercise. I just want to eat comfort foods. I don't want to read things that I want to escape into movies and really kind of go on YouTube and scroll for hours at a time, And I find that, and I think there's times when that's really necessary. I think you have to give your discipline a break, because willpower is limited, for one thing. But when I find, one of the keys for me anyway, and one of the first things I ask a client when they're going through a difficult time is I ask them, how are you taking care of your body? And most of the time when they're suffering professionally or emotionally, they are not taking care of their body. And I find, for me anyway, that when I go back to the exercising, at a fairly, decent level, and I start really eating again in the proteins and, obviously vitamins and supplements, that is one of the key things, especially the exercise for me, is being able to get out in nature and, put weight on my backpack and go for a hike or go for a run or lift weights. Those are things that help me get through. And I think everybody is different. Everybody has their own prescription, their own remedy to getting through difficult times. I don't think exercise and eating right or eating well can ever hurt your endeavors, no matter what you're going through.
Yeah, I agree. And I really want to be clear with everyone that I do not stand in judgment of anyone else's behalf. I know a lot of people that have suffered very significant loss, and they've rolled up in a ball, for a time. And sometimes for a really long time, and maybe they'll do it forever. I am not here to say, no, you need to do what I did, or you need to take one or more of my suggestions or ideas. No, I'm here to say it's very personal. grief is personal. The way you decide to live your life is personal. You need to do what you think is best for you. And if that means you're rolling up in the ball, if it means, you want to go drink or watch, a movie that jars your senses, I'm not here to say that that's good or bad. I'm more here to say, follow your path, watch for the little footlights that can lift you up, and be of service to others. And remember that you can keep going. So whatever that may mean for you, I do think others can be extremely helpful. That's the reason why I included the words of so many others in my book. And I know it's jazzed a few people up, and they're really, hell-bent now on making some positive changes in their life. But I do not stand in judgment. I'm only here to provide my story and my ideas and hope that they are of service to others.
Right. Well, I think, like you said, you have to look for the lifelines, and you grabbed onto the lifelines along the way. Your book is a lifeline to some people, and for others, it may not be. They might have other lifelines that they seek out there. And I like the idea of something you had said earlier. Aren't we all just walking each other home? That quote, I think, in the long run, and I think you're right on that. I think, when you go through something tragic and you go through a very difficult point in life, and it's easy for us to look at another person and saying, why aren't you snapping out of this? Okay, it's time to pick your head up and move forward, and pick yourself up by the bootstraps. Yet it's such a unique and personal journey for everyone. And I think when we start to judge people who are going through something, we're not doing them any service. Our job, in my opinion, is to be there for them. Just don't walk in front, don't walk behind, walk alongside them. And then when they tell you to step aside for a while. And then when they call you back, walk alongside them again. Be a positive influence by just simply being there with them. And sometimes it's hard in Western society. We have very little patience. We want to fix people. We want to fix ourselves. We want to fix things. We want to make things better, and it can be a very challenging process for a lot of people, but just understand that you are fixing things by simply being there and walking alongside that person.
Yeah, and that's really what my husband Dan did. You remember I said he just watched. He watched. And, sometimes it's not easy to watch a loved one going through hell. And believe me, Dan loved Aaron. He was his stepdad, and he was going through his own hell. But he was smart enough to know what he needed to do for me, which is just sort of be there as my wingman, fly alongside. Don't get in front of me. Don't push me from behind, and just watch. I know he was watching to see if I was going to go off the rails in some way. And, he let me just sort of have at the rope that I needed. And I think he would have rescued me if I had started to go under. But, yeah, what you said is right. Just be alongside is sometimes the very best thing that we can do for somebody else, just listening.
Yeah, like I said, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that if you care for someone, we're up to it. For most of us are up to that challenge, because the nice thing about it, we're going to go through difficult times. Everybody will, and it's just nice in that if you walk alongside somebody when they need you, they're probably going to walk alongside you when you need them, and that's what you said by we're all just walking each other home.
Yes.
My friend, I can't tell you how much I appreciate coming back on the show again. And your story is tragic, but yet so inspiring and amazing at the same time. When you were going through your story, I literally was sitting here. I took my shirt off so I could blow my nose and behind trying to turn my head, blow my nose and wipe my tears. But then as you start talking, I find so much hope in the story. There's so much hope in this story. Aaron's still with us. In fact, I believe Sam is now with Aaron, isn't he?
She is. Yeah, Aaron's dog, the one that I said got the welt on the bridge of her nose. It wasn't because Aaron was gone. It was because I was in so much agony, and I was just literally, it was so palpable that I was just making everyone in my orbit ill. And he lived with us till she was 17 years old, which is very old for a large dog. And she passed only 5 days after Aaron's earthly birthday, March 20. So she passed on March 25th. And she is now resting with what was her body is now resting there with him.
So, and she just passed recently, didn't she?
Yeah, this year on March 25th.
That's what I thought. So Aaron kept her down here for quite a while to help you and the family, but decided, okay, Sam, it's time to come home with me now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whew. My friend, I don't think our doing podcast relationship is over. There's so much more to your story as the years progress, and I'd like to have you back on sometime when you're ready and when you'd like to.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I just really, really appreciate our connection. I always listen to the podcast when I have a minute each week, and you just got some wonderful guests.
Well, we definitely bring on some wonderful guests, and you are right up there, so I appreciate you so much. So thank you again for being such inspiring is probably not even the right word I want to use, a hope-filled and a hope-giving guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Everyone out there, please take the time to look at the show notes. And I would really recommend to look at Mary's Facebook page, Not Just From the Other Side. I follow it and it just keeps me grounded. It really does. And I have read her book. It stays on my shelf where I can see it on a consistent basis. I've given it as gifts for other people who have loved it. And it might be something that could really help you, whether you're going through the loss of a loved one or not. Just understanding that we do have that life is precious, and we do tend to focus on things that we feel are precious, but they're earthly precious, earthly pleasures, I should say, that really don't give long-term significance to life. But when you read Mary's book, you will realize that there is so much more that sometimes we take for granted, and it tends to humble. It humbled me. It made me realize that I want to appreciate more of what I really truly have on this earth and the loved ones and the love that I share with not just my family, but my friends, clients, even the Bamboo Pack. For most of the vast majority, I probably will never meet, but it makes me appreciate you all. So I'll see you all in a week. In the meantime, please get out there and strive to be and give your best, show love and respect to others, and live with purpose. And remember, one breath at a time. I appreciate you all.